So Mark tells a story of Jesus. He's walking towards in Bethany on the road, and he notices a fig tree, and he's feeling hungry. And Mark says, seeing the fig tree and the leaves of the fig tree in the distance, he makes his way towards the fig tree, hoping that he can get some delicious figs to eat. And it's some distance, but by the time he actually gets to the fig tree, he notices that the fig tree doesn't have any figs on it. And as a result, he performs a miracle, a rather destructive miracle, where he says that he curses the fig tree and says that the fig tree must never bear fruit from this point onwards. And well, it's a really interesting story. Not often do we see Jesus actually performing a destructive miracle in this sense. And often we would think about that miracle as Jesus teaching us that we are to be fruitful and we have an opportunity to be fruitful. And if we don't use that opportunity, then of course we will become a tree that forever is unable to bear fruit. But when you look at the detail of that story, there's a little bit of detail there that actually is caught my attention and really, I think, changes the lesson a little bit. And that is, it says in the record of Mark that when he came to the tree and failed to find any figs on it, it wasn't because that was a particularly bad fig tree. You know, at home where we lived in Kawisil, we had this incredibly beautiful avo tree. It was huge. And every time at avo season, I would make my way down to try and grab one of these beautiful avo fruit that came from the avo tree, but that tree would never ever bear any fruit that was worth eating. And so rightly, I was very upset with that avo tree. I didn't cut it down, but in the case of the fig tree, it actually says specifically that the fig tree did not bear figs because it was not the season for figs. And so you think about it and say, well, you know, Jesus cursed this fig tree because it didn't have any figs. But it was obvious that it wouldn't have any figs because it wasn't the fig season. It would be like me going to the avo tree in June, which is not the season for avos, and being very angry because my avo tree didn't bear fruit. So what is the lesson that Jesus is teaching? He is teaching a lesson to do with fruitfulness, but there's a nuance to that lesson that I'd never noticed before. And I think it's something like this, that Jesus' expectation of our fruitfulness, and that refers to our showing forth the potential that we have, specifically in manifesting the fruit of the Spirit, love, peace, joy, patience, the character of God, is not just to take place in season. In other words, we're to be a very, very special type of tree in the garden of God. We are to be the tree that is fruitful in season and out of season. Paul in his letter to Timothy speaks of this idea when he says that as disciples, he wants us to preach the word, to be urgent in everything we do for others, in season and out of season. In other words, we're not just to be doing good to all men and preaching the gospel and showing forth the grace and the glory of God when things are going well, when we might say it's in season, when it's convenient for us, when it is natural for us, but we're also to be fruitful when it is unnatural for us. This is the idea of loving others when they don't love you. This is the idea of giving to others when they have taken from you. This is the idea of being fruitful out of season. And isn't it remarkable that when we get to that final image of the New Jerusalem and this incredible image of the kingdom of God on earth and the earth being filled with God's glory, and we see the vision of the Garden of Eden, as it were, restored, and we see the tree of life. And we are told that when John looked on that tree, the trees were bearing 12 seasons of crops. Every month of the year, they were bearing fruit. And so there wasn't a season, as it were, when the tree of life in the garden of God, in the final kingdom of the New Jerusalem, when those trees were not bearing fruit. And that's the expectation Jesus has of us. That is what we're capable of being. Trees that don't only bear figs in season, but in every season. And I think that's a remarkable lesson for us to take into the week. Certainly something I had never thought of or seen before.